So I think recording has started.
Hello, everybody. My name is Safia Lahadin. I am an advisor with Career Service. Welcome to all of you this afternoon who've made the time to attend this rather late in the afternoon session on an introduction to writing CVs and cover letters. Just a reminder that to mute yourselves, to switch off your cameras. If you wanted to ask a question, please do put it in the chat or raise your hand, and then I'll answer them as we go along, depending on the number of questions that we receive. Just to remind you that the session is recorded, so you'll be able to go back into the chat afterwards and access the recording. I will also be posting the slides if you wanted to make use of it. And all of the links that I will use will be posted in the chat. And there is a particular CV format that I'm offering as part of this conversation, and I'll post that in the chat as well. So welcome to all of you. This afternoon's, as I said, to this afternoon's conversation on CVs and cover letters. I wish to say that it is one of a series of webinars on career development, so you can choose which webinar to attend depending on where you are with your career development. The other webinars that we have are exploring your options and understanding your skills, understanding networking and using LinkedIn, preparing for interviews, CVs for masters and PhDs, and understanding bursary and scholarship application. A whole bunch of webinars that we offer to you. I will put the link in the chat to the events page so you can have a look and register. And they don't need to be viewed in any particular order at all. So let's start with what is a CV. If you have a look at the definition of CV, it literally means path of life. I'm going to switch off my camera if you don't mind. Definition of a CV means literally part of life, the Latin definition thereof, and it gives us a perspective, not just of when you graduate and then landing your dream job, but also a path for your career. And a CV can be seen as a hook that will allow recruiters to bite and be interested, considering recruiting you for a particular job. I think it's important to note and to say here that even although you're going to be representing your skills and your qualifications and a bit about yourself, it's always useful to remember that the CV really is about the job, and it is about the person on the other side who is going to be reviewing your CV. And so your job with your CV is to make it easy for the other person to select you. So always keep that in mind. And your CV then is a platform to present your skills, your experience, your qualifications, and for your personality to shine through. So why is working on a CV good for you? I'm just going to list all the factors and why working on the CV is good for you. It helps you think through what it is that you have done. It helps you present yourself in the best possible light. It is a base document to adapt to any application. It raises your level of confidence and helps you realize your gaps that you might need based on the job requirements. And I'm sure those of you who've completed your CVs, your CV, and when you look back, you might be pleasantly surprised by how much you have achieved. It's certainly been my experience, and it's certainly been the experience that's been reflected to me when we've had conversations with students who wanted their CV reviews. So when you complete your CV, you're obviously completing it to apply for a particular job. And it is important to note that sometimes when you apply for a job, you need to understand what else it is that you need to submit with your CV. And so typically an application package for a particular role would cover a motivation letter or cover letter, your CV, an application form, and additional requested documentation. Although I have to say most of, if not all of the CVs these days are submitted online via applicant tracking system, and I mentioned a bit briefly about applicant tracking systems as we go along. The reason I'm mentioning this is to follow the instructions very closely when making a job application. Be clear on what is being asked of you. If you, a lot of online jobs would say, one of the requirements would state that if you do not submit all of the documentation, if you do not submit everything that the package requires of you, then your application will be considered null and void. So do read the instructions very carefully. So then how do employers and recruiters use your CV? They obviously want to see who matches the minimum requirements for success in the job, and those minimum requirements are stated in the job advertisement, whether it's online or on a social media platform. So they look at the job, the job requirements and the person's specifications, and it's really also to screen out those people who do not match the minimum requirements. And this is a really important point. What they use to screen out, systems they use to screen out are on the applicant tracking systems, algorithms. So what those algorithms do is they can scan your CV to see if there's a match to the advert in the job. And once you've been shortlisted, what a recruiter might do is just skim, take a finger and run down the CV, look for relevant information, and either screen you in or screen you out and shortlist you then for interviews. And they have very little time to do this. As you can imagine, they have thousands of CVs to go through in our jobs market, in our economic climate. The number of jobs for number of applicants for the job is the ratio is incredibly high. So they don't have a lot of time to go through too much detail and too many pages of your CV. Just an invitation, if you have a question, to post it in the chat, please, again, and a reminder. And so they have about 30 seconds to move for you. So you have 30 seconds to make a really good impression. So make sure that you do make that good impression and ensure that your CV speaks to the advertisement or the job requirements at least. So then what are some of the basic principles around CVs? I'm getting some feedback, so can I ask you to mute yourself, please? So what are some of the basic principles? Natasha, could I ask? Oh, I'm going to, sorry. Let me just go back to the presentation. I've lost my space a bit now. Please bear with me. Just lost my space a bit now, trying to mute. So some of the basic principles of a CV. Is to say that one size does not fit all. And what we mean by that is that when you apply for a job, every single job is different. And so therefore your CV has to be tailored to match the requirements of the job. And it's worthwhile remembering this so that it makes it easier for the recruiter to screen you in. And when recruiters go through your CV or an algorithm scans your CV, they are looking for particular words. They are looking for for you to speak to them in the language that they've reflected in the advertisement. So one size does not fit all. If you are going to be presenting anything that reflects dates, do so in chronological order. Recruiters want to typically, and employers typically want to say, what are you doing now, and work backwards so that they can see if there are any gaps. And if there are any gaps, they can ask you in an interview what to explain it, or to see if you've presented a reason for those gaps. Standard is 2 pages. If you have a lot of experience, I guess then the maximum would be 3 pages, but more than that, you are really going to have to be selective about what you include in your CV, and ensure that it is tailored to, and your guide is always going to be the advertisement. So it needs to be comprehensive yet concise, and that's a very difficult, often very difficult task to choose between what's important and what's relevant, because you've invested so much in your experiences, and everything is important to you. And so I guess what I want to do here now is to plug our services, which is to say, if you want us to help review your CV, you can make an appointment with us, and I'll post the link to do so in the chat later. Be honest and factual, and substantiate your claims. You'd be amazed at the tools that recruiters have available to check certain facts. They will go and check on your social media pages. They will go and check on your LinkedIn profile if you have. They will go and check on Facebook if they're really that interested in you. So be honest and factual, and be professional. And of course, represent your best self, and use consistent language in terms of form. If you're going to use past tense, then use past tense. If you're going to use present tense, then use present tense, and do edit. The most frustrating thing is to get a CV and there's a bunch of squiggles. The person hasn't bothered to do an edit or to accept a particular format of English. In South Africa, we use the S instead of the Z, and so you get a CV full of squiggles. It just, I guess, becomes frustrating for the recipient to go through that, and not, the impression it creates is that you haven't done an edit check. So do edit your CV. There are a bunch of application tools online that you can use to check that. Be careful of templates. I'm going to come to templates in a couple of slides. So those are the basic principles of a CV. Here we're offering you a format of the CV. This is the kind of headings of a CV, your name and contact details. I will go through each of them in detail. So your name and contact details, your personal profile or your personal objective, your education, other training you might have had, awards or scholarships that you received, any achievements that you want to amplify, work experience, of course, leadership positions you might have had, voluntary or community work you might have done, your skills, and then referees to offer. So I'm going to go through some of these headings in a bit more detail, just to show you or give you examples of what that might look like. I mentioned earlier about templates. I want to say here about templates. There are many templates that exist, but don't compromise style over substance. What recruiters and employers are more interested in, they're interested in the substance. Also, with a lot of templates, if you're going to use, and I'll post this article in the chat as well, if you're going to use columns and tables and texts, what happens in applicant tracking systems is that those columns and tables get squeezed, which misaligns the wording of your document, which means as the algorithm scans left to right, they're going to read misaligned information and misaligned words. And so it's not going to be able to match your CV and the words, the content contained in it, to the advert. So just be careful of that. I'm going to offer you a template in the next slide, and I'll post it in the chat. So be careful of that. If you are going to use a fancy template with columns that looks beautiful and it has substance, it's best to send it directly to a person. So if you have a direct email of a person that you want to send it to, then do so. But otherwise, no one understands what happens to columns and tables with applicant tracking systems. And do read through the article. And so this is a very simple a CV format with the different headings that I outlined earlier. And the great thing about this is that because you are going to apply to so many jobs, and because you are going to have to tailor it so that your CV speaks to the job or the job advertisement or the company that you're applying to, it's a lot easier. It takes a lot less time to tailor it. If you're going to be working with columns and tables, things are going to be misaligned. You're going to have awkward spaces in the middle of your CV, and it's not going to look very professional. So do use this as a very simple format. Remember, the essence really is about substance, and you want to make it easy for the person to take their finger. Once they've shortlisted you, there's been a match with the algorithms, easy for the recruiter to take their finger and just skim down the page. And I say that as a person who's been in human resources, kind of that's what I do. I have 2 seconds to flip through your CV, second a page looking for particular words that I know that I want to see in your CV. And this format makes it really easy for me to do so, or any recruiter for that matter. It's not a very I guess it doesn't make an impression like this because there's nothing on it, but I promise you, once you populate it with substance, it does stand out. So then, going to each of the headings. So we've indicated, start at the top with your name and contact details. So here you have your email address, your cell number, and if you have a LinkedIn profile, insert that. You don't need to put ID number, you don't need to put your physical address, that's not needed at this time. You don't need to put your nationality unless you have a visa or there are visa requirements. And it is relevant to the application. Otherwise, it's not necessary to do so. Nothing about driver's license. It's not necessary at this stage of the process. The next column is the profile. A bit more about the profile. So the profile needs to be concise overview, and usually 3 to 4 bullet points or phrases. Highlight who you are and what you have to offer, and don't use the third person. I'm sorry. Do not write in I guess in the first person, not third person. Do not write in the first person. An example here is of a profile is to say graduate with the Bachelor of Commerce, currently completing honours in economics at UCT and looking for graduate role in consulting sector. Member of a winning team in Flux Business Game 2018. Chairperson of UCT Debating Society, and some vacation experience that you might have had in customer service, and then something really personal about you that makes you stand out, and if it's relevant to the job, author of a travel blog, and then you provide the link. So just some points about the profile. Tailor it to the specific role. Mention something in your profile that speaks to the role. Keep it brief, as we already mentioned. Focus on where you are currently are, your academic qualifications, something unique about yourself, as I said, that aligns with the job, and do proofread it. I wanted to say I'm going to flip through out of the presentation later on in the conversation to take you to the UCT's career site to show you our resources on writing CVs and cover letters. And in those, you'll find resources about how to write a profile that was very useful as well. So coming to the education section now, part of your CV, you will see here that I've mentioned at the start that whenever you use dates, use them in a reverse chronological order. So we're moving from 2020 to 2016. So honours degree in economics and from the University of Cape Town. If you use University of Cape Town, write the first time, write it out in full the first time, and then put the abbreviation in brackets thereafter. And this is the norm for anything where you might have to use abbreviations. Write it out in full the first time around and then put it in brackets. Remember, not everybody has your context. So you don't want the recruiter to spend time thinking about what it is that you're referring to. Then your undergraduate degree, BCom in economics, and you see UCT, and then the school that you were at. Any additional subjects or grades or projects or dissertations if they are relevant. And oftentimes what you might want to put in here is your grade point average, and you might want to put in distinctions that you have achieved. The next column, if you have done any additional training, you can indicate what you've done. So they hear where you've done it, what it is that you've done, sorry, and the company that you, or the organization through which you are certified. Moving on to the next column, or next heading in your CV is that of achievements. And again, we're looking at achievements in the reverse chronological order. So 2019, you're a Golden Key member, 2018, class medal for second year statistics course, and in 2016, you were the top achiever at school in computer applications technology in grade 12. Any awards that you might have achieved in 2020, you received a bursary, or any other awards that you might have received, to list them there. Work experience then, just some pointers around work experience. I guess I'm not going to keep on saying reverse chronological order, but this is the chronological order is really important. What recruiters look for is they do look for gaps, and they want to understand what those gaps mean. Oftentimes students take a gap of completing their studies for whatever reasons, mostly financial reasons or medical reasons. If you do not indicate why you've taken a gap, you leave it up to the recruiter or employers to make assumptions. And the one thing you do not want to do, you do not want the recruiter or a prospective employer to make assumptions about you, because you have no idea what they will assume. And if they have to make assumptions, they're going to go to the next CV where they don't have to make assumptions. So if there are gaps, then state the reason for gaps. You don't have to state confidential reasons, but there are ways in which you can frame it so that there is an explanation. And if you have such a case, you can come and talk to us and we might help you frame it in a particular way. But it is real. Employers understand this, recruiters understand it as well. So do explain the gap so that they don't have to make assumptions around them. So dates I've indicated. So including your work experience, whether it's full-time, part-time or volunteering, the dates from when to when. So if you worked a full year, you can say 2018 to 2019. If you work for a couple of months, you must indicate the month. If you work for a month, you indicate just that particular month so that you do not create a false impression on the other side. Indicate your job title and designation. What did you hold? You can state the company name, not the address. And then a concise description. The concise description of the purpose. I see your question, Francis. I'll come to that in a minute. You don't list the tasks of the job. We had a couple of employers in our career conversation say this really, give us this feedback or give students this feedback. And the feedback was this: we can find out online what the task of a particular role is. We're not interested in what the task is. We want to know what the purpose of the role was and what were the key achievements that you achieved whilst in this job, anything that you made a difference in, and to list that with quantitative or qualitative information. Use metrics or results where possible. Francis, how far back should we go with our achievements or awards? Is there a generally accepted length of time, or do it depend on the job and the person applying? I guess as far as you have to be really selective, and you wanted to speak to the job requirements, you wanted to speak specifically the skills that the company is looking for, but also the attributes the company is looking for. For example, if a company says, you know, we want someone who's an attribute who's kind of proactive, if you have any achievements or any awards that speak to that attribute, then you include those. Remember, if you have achievements or awards, they don't need to be people. There's nothing to say you should have achieved something every single year. So in your achievement section, things don't have to be in chronological order. So be selective about that. So that's a general principle. In terms of time, don't go back more than 5 years. unless it's something that really, really stands out. So those are the kind of questions to ask yourself. Does it speak to the job requirements in terms of skills? Does it speak to the attributes the company wants? And does it give me an edge? Maybe that's something the company hasn't listed, but you've done your research in terms of competitor research, and it's something that you can add value to. I hope that's answered your question, Francis. Let me know if not. So now then, an example of how to present your work experience here. So you will see here the date from June to September. Sorry, those are all the messages that are coming through, and I will check them out. Great, Francis. So you will see here, this person is indicated to work from June to September for prison management as an intern, and then indicated what it is that she did. And what you will notice here, she used really powerful action words. And this is really important when you are going to present your skills, when we come to presenting skills in a couple of slides. So here, this person indicated they conducted research, reorganized stuff, they initiated certain things. And so when you use those action words and what it is that you've achieved, companies don't have to guess what you've done. It speaks to them very, very clearly, and it kind of lands quite significantly when you post it like that. So with the description of your activities, use powerful action words. As I said, employers want to know what it is that you did, what it is you achieved, as opposed to a task or a duties list. Volunteer or community work, present it in the same way as you have done with your formal work experience. In this particular case, this person was a helper at Kayala Temba Old Age Home in Newton, and indicated what it is she did, assisted with cleaning, cooking, laundry, and helping elderly with self-care. And that's a really succinct statement of what the purpose of that particular role was. A lot of companies want to know that you have a sense of community, a sense of social responsibility, and if the companies themselves indicate, they have a sense of social responsibility, you do want to reflect that in your CV. And if the companies that you are interested in have this value, and you've not undertaken any volunteer community work, or you can't find any, start your own. It's so easy today to start your own, just with feeding schemes, for example, with a bunch of friends. It's so you don't have to wait for an opportunity to come along. With community work, it's the one area where you can really start something on your own with your family, or with a group of friends, or just anybody in your community in the street to start something. And it's amazing the skills that you will acquire as a result of that. Which I guess is a lovely segue into the next slide. We're going to talk a bit about skills and how to present them. And just some notes about the skills. When you have a look at your skills, consider and review and all of the experiences that you've had and all of the activities you've been involved in. Identify the skills you've learned and practice from those. Know the difference between skills and attributes, and maybe I'm going to talk about that, just say a sentence about that in a minute. I'm going to plug another webinar here, and we have a particular webinar on how to present your skills specifically. So be on the lookout for that when you go onto our events page, the link to which I will post in the chat again. Skills are transferable, particularly if you have them acquired them through the experiences that you've had and the activities, and then substantiate with evidence. And this is really important. Oftentimes students come to us and say, well, I don't have experience. I don't have formal work experience. And it's amazing once you just widen the lens to say, OK, what other experiences have you had? What activities have you been involved in? Which clubs and societies have you belonged to? And what might you have learned from being involved and having had those experiences. And once you widen that lens, it's amazing what you can discover about how much you have achieved. substantiate with evidence. We'll come to that in a minute. And so this slide is just about saying, when you look at all of those experiences, your skills come from work experience, skills you've done just by virtue of completing your degree, career search and job search skills that you have done, job research skills. Because when you do research, you've done desktop research, and you can say, I can do desktop research, extramural activities, hobbies and interests that you might have been involved in. I want to move on from this slide actually and go to the next one. This expands on 2 slides ago, where this expands on the pie chart. We've developed something called an experience wheel, and we've tried to list all of the experiences that you as students might have had, just getting to where you are. And to use it as a kind of a structured way to say, okay, I've had these experiences, what have I learned, which skills have I acquired? And again, you'd be amazed how much you've achieved when you look at this I guess in a structured way. Which societies have you belonged to? Have you traveled and what have you learned? Have you had a side hustle and what have you learned from having a side hustle? And so the invitation here really is to have a look at this experience wheel when you draft your CV and when you are looking for skills for your CV. I want to point out here as well, and I'll put it in the chat. There's a great site called prospects.ac.uk, and what they've done, it's a career site that's open source, which is wonderful. And what they have done, they've done research on what kind of skills students have developed and acquired just by virtue of completing a particular degree or by virtue of majoring in a particular subject. And all you do is you go onto the site and you pop in either your degree in the search icon or the major that you've accomplished in the search icon, and then it will bring up skills for your CV. If I have time at the end, I might take you there just to show you and navigate into how really cool that looks. I'll take you there in the UCT site for identifying skills. So then how do we present your skills in your CV? You will see here a number of skills that have been listed: persuasion, social and media, web development, organizing and planning, and tutoring. And so this is how best to present your skills. Use really strong action words. You will see here the person said, I initiated and set up and managed a Twitter and Instagram account while interning for Rhino Africa. Person knows exactly what it is that you did. Organized a 3-day hike with a group of friends, organizing transports and budgets, and which is, if you didn't have formal experience to organize, have a look at your broader experience and your experience wheel. Have you tutored? And when you present just evidence for your skill, be specific, use metrics. Like how many people have you tutored? What grade did you tutor them in? For which organization did you tutor them in? So be very specific. Tutored two first year classes of 30 students for a particular course. So use action words, indicate the metrics. What did you achieve by using that skill? And here in the slide, which you will, I will upload, there is a link with a list of skills action words for a bunch of skills. So for communication, there's a list of action words you can use for communication, for teamwork, for leadership. So it's very useful to go there and have a look to see how you might create a really powerful impression in your CV for your skills. So not like this. Oftentimes we get CVs where someone gives us a percentage, or they give us a bar graph, or they give like 4 or 5 dots to indicate the level of proficiency. The difficulty with that is that everybody has different standards by which they have defined, or descriptions that they've tied to particular skills. And so when you do this, we have no sense of what it is you actually did. And how companies do check, I guess, skills is they have particular definitions that they ascribe to those skills. They can either use generic definitions, or they have specific definitions that mean something to them as a company. That's why you need to demonstrate what it is you have done and to give evidence for your skills. And so they want to check whether your evidence that you've presented meets the definition of the skill. So for leadership, they might have described leadership as organizing, initiating, planning, giving direction, and steering a group of people. And if you use those very powerful words, there's an instant match between how they've identified the skill and how you've demonstrated evidence of the skill. And this is really what happens when your CV gets shortlisted and algorithms scan through it. Moving on to the next slide. This is the use. Sorry, there's something that's happening here. And then we come to the last part, which is the list of referees. They list at least 2 referees from different areas, not relatives and not friends. Ask permission, and when you are applying for a job and you're using them, do send them the job that you are applying for, and do ask them to give you a good reference. Don't be afraid to do so. The reason why you want to do that is so that they're not caught unawares when they all of a sudden get someone who's going to call them and to ask for a reference. Secondly, you also want to alert them to the fact that, you know, sometimes they get a private call or a private number, or they get on their phone a number that they don't recognize, and they might just not respond to it. So you do want to alert them to the fact that you've applied for the job. They might expect a call, and could they give you a good reference, please? Any questions before I move on to cover letters? And here is just an example of how you might reflect those referees on your CV. You will see here that I've indicated contact numbers available upon request. In this day and age of identity theft, we recommend that you rather provide an email address for the person and state that contact numbers are available upon request. So at least the person has a way of contacting the referee. Any questions before I move on to cover letters? Okay, I'm mindful of the time. So what is a cover letter then? A cover letter is your opportunity to demonstrate your knowledge and interest in the employer or position, and to highlight what you can offer and why you're a good fit for the role. Very important, as I've said, and I can't overstress it, is that this is about being a good fit for the role, and that is why a tailored CV is critically important. So cover letter is generally 1 page with an introduction, 2 to 3 paragraphs, and then a closing, and I'll go through what each of those paragraphs might contain. Remember, it is a formal letter. We get so many reviews for cover letters, and people with students forgetting that it is a formal letter. So this is where your address goes on the right-hand side and the company's address on the left-hand side. So factor that into how you structure your letter, and the cover letter is usually 1 page. So bear that in mind. So your address, the date, your contact details, email address, and telephone number on your cover letter, and the company's name. If you don't know the name of the person that you're if it's just a general person that you're sending it to, it might be worth your while to look on LinkedIn for the talent manager of that company, or the recruitment manager of that company, or the HR manager of that company, or the HR officer of that company, so that there is a name that you can address the letter to, and make it personal instead of saying dear HR manager, dear recruitment manager. And it's so easy to find those people on LinkedIn. Even if you don't have a LinkedIn profile, you can easily look up HR manager or talent manager of Deloitte or of Axio or any other company for that matter. So you can address it to a person, a specific person. So 1 page introduction, 2 to 3 paragraphs in the closing statement. So the first paragraph is introduction, where you are now. I'm a BCom honors student. I'm applying for an intern consultant, and I've attached my CV for your consideration and transcripts as you have requested. The second paragraph, explain why you're interested in the position and the organization. Show your research. Don't state the obvious without making it connecting to who you are. And by that I mean, and this is where your personal attributes come in. Companies often have on their sites what it is that they value. And so what you want to do in your cover letter is connect their values with your values. And so there is that connection. For example, if they are big on social outreach, how does that work back to you? What kind of volunteer work have you done to reflect the same value? If they green in a particular way, what have you done that speaks to that initiatives and that belief system that they have that makes that connection? And mention contacts you've already made in the organization. So if you know someone that you might have spoken to and you've been so lucky and privileged to do that, say, you know, a friend of mine's worked there and made a recommend and said it's a really great place to work. Or, you know, an alumni from UCT that I contacted through LinkedIn about what the job entails, works with you, and she's indicated that it's a really great place to work and that, you know, that I would be a good fit. And what that does is there's just a link, and often, you know, this referrals, it kind of, I guess, reverse referral, even though it's not a direct referral. And companies oftentimes value referral, place high value on referrals because people won't refer anybody that they don't think will meet the muster or meet the criteria of the job. The second paragraph, show how you meet the requirements and the relevant skills. Choose highlights. You're not going to repeat your CV. Choose highlights, interest or attributes that show your suitability. You know, if you are energetic and they're looking for someone that's energetic or proactive or ambitious or resilient, whatever attributes that they are looking for. And remember, this is the point I wanted to make about attributes. Attributes are those characteristics that are personal to you. They reflect your preferences, they reflect your personality. Skills are things that you have been trained in and that you can acquire. And so that fundamentally is the difference between attributes and skills. And here you want to highlight your attributes that speak to the values of the company and what they value. Oftentimes companies will say, looking for an energetic person, we're looking for a proactive person. Mention links to your thesis if this is relevant, or your research or experience or particular interest, and use select examples from your CV. And the last paragraph, indicate if there's any disability that might that is of relevance to them or relevant to you. Note any unusual circumstances if you've taken longer than usual to complete the degree, and that happens. It's very, very common, but indicate this. And this is where you close the gaps. Where it took a long time for me to complete my degree for financial reasons, or I had a medical condition that took a long while to be treated. So this is where you kind of close the gaps. Or I had you know, it took me a long time because I had a death in the family and I had to support the family. And so, and I, you know, I had to build the funds to come back to university. Also state possible lack of availability. I guess today in COVID world, you can't say that you're going on a vacation, but you might be out of, you know, out of touch, or you might leave town, or you're not contactable, but do state that. And if you have a work permit, state your work permit status. And in closing, thank the person for their time and consideration. And this is where you have a name, your salutation would be yours sincerely. If you don't have a specific name that you're addressing this person to, then it would be yours faithfully. Best to try and find a name. It's dead easy via LinkedIn. There is time to flip to the website to show you the mini series and to just show you what a CV looks like and to show you what a profile contains. So I'll do that in a minute. But before I do that, I just want to say upcoming events that we have. Exploring Your Career Options, that is on the 17th, tomorrow, 1 to 2 p.m. My colleague Megan Blacker will present that. And on the 26th of August, 12:45 to 2 p.m. We're having a bunch of people coming from the health sciences and science disciplines, external people, and alumni, maybe not just only alumni from UCT, to come and talk to us about different careers and their career paths. The invitation is for you to join. The great thing is that they give great tips about career paths, great tips about what employers are looking for. And then I'll post this link in the chat for upcoming events. Any questions before I stop presenting? In fact, I will stop presenting and then I will show my camera. Any questions? No questions? Wow. Okay, I want to show you the career site. This is the career service website, careers.uct.ac.za. If you click on the tab students and you go down career options and you click on identifying skills, you will, and you scroll down, here is a host of skills identified that employers look for. And the great thing about this, you can click on any one of them, problem solving. And what will come up is a definition of that skill. So as you can see here, it says the ability to think laterally, to research, to analyze, evaluate information. So when you present evidence for your skill, you can use some of these action words: analyzed, evaluated, researched, developed, to give really powerful statements to your skills. So that's the one thing I wanted to show you. I want to take you also to making a It does look like something went wrong and I apologize for that. I'm just going to go into the site and show you about career service and then show you the prospect site. I'm going to add in here data analytics. Data analytics is a subject that I might have done. And then to scroll down to skills, and you will see skills that might be needed that you could add to your CV. Sorry, can I just have an indication of the fact that I'm back online? If anybody could just let me know.
Yeah.
Many thanks. Thank you, Thomas. I apologize for that. There was a blip in my internet connection for a minute. And so I showed you the prospect site. Thomas, can you tell me what you're majoring in?
Psychology.
Psychology. Okay, so I'm going to type in here psychology to state, just to tell you that, or to show you that any subject that you might have majored in, any degree would be listed here. So here it says, what can I do with psychology degree? I mentioned earlier the fact that this company has done research that says just by virtue of completing a particular degree or a majoring in a subject, you would have developed skills for your CV. And if you have a look down the right-hand side here, it says skills for your CV. And you will see skills that you've not already done, so you can add to your CV if it's relevant and if you can provide evidence for it. So really a really cool site, and I'll post this link into the chat right now, and I'll post also the career service site into the chat. Any questions? Anybody? So I'm posting the link in the chat. If you don't have any questions, please, I'm going to post a link to feedback questions, and I'm going to ask you to take a couple of seconds. It takes only 2 minutes for you to complete the feedback. I'd appreciate your feedback, please. This is the link to the career site for you to have a look at identifying your skills. And then I want to upload the template. Let me see if I can upload the CV template for you to have a look at. Upload from my computer. If I can just do that in a minute. Remember, I will upload a recording, and I will upload